Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Croatian Police Museum outside of Zagreb, Croatia, taking a look at some of the particularly rare and interesting firearms in their collection. And today we have an HS-91 submachine gun. Now, the backstory to this is going to be very simple for me to go over because we have absolutely no idea who made it or where exactly it came from. This is a gun that was confiscated by the Croatian police a number of years ago, and it is serial number 188. It is clearly marked HS-91, no relation to HS product. This is clearly a gun that came out of the Homeland War in Croatia. So essentially, in 1991, Serbia invaded Croatia. The Croatians didn't really have any significant military to speak of, just some lightly armed police. And so there was sort of this chaotic frenzy of arms procurement, which involved importing what they could, which wasn't enough, and manufacturing what they could, which really also wasn't quite enough. But there were a bunch of submachine gun designs that were put together and manufactured in usually limited quantities in Croatia in 1991. By 92-93, the situation was improving to the point that they had more standardized weapons, and they didn't really need so much of the home-built stuff. But during that brief time period, lots of interesting guns like this showed up. So, since I don't know exactly who made this or where or when outside of Croatia in 1991, let's just skip ahead to taking a closer look at it. All right, we can just barely get all of this in frame here. This is a very long gun with a actually relatively short barrel on it. And what it is fundamentally is a hybrid of Russian PPSh-41 and Yugoslav M56. And it's pretty much as simple as, like, right here is the dividing line, and everything in front is M56, and everything in the back is PPSh-41. So if we start at the front end, we have the magazine here, magazine catch right there in the front, and this is a tight and slightly hand-fitted Yugo M56 magazine, so 7.62 Tokarev caliber, double stack, double feed. It has a sling bar at the front, like an M56 did. The receiver is a little different because it is a hinged two-part receiver like a PPSh, but the barrel itself appears to be off of an M56. The M56s had a bayonet lug on a band on the barrel. This does not have the bayonet lug. It doesn't really lose anything as a result. But, it also has a front sight, basically off of a Yugo M56. Now, that was certainly a gun that was accessible and available during wartime Croatia in the early 1990s. So it kind of makes sense that something like this would be put to use. Now, it's interesting that if they had the Tokarev ammunition, and they had the magazines, and they had the barrels, like the front half of the gun, a little odd that like they didn't just use a stock Yugo M56. But what they get is, in fact, a almost certainly much higher rate of fire gun by giving it the back end, essentially the firing mechanism, of a PPSh-41. By the way, here are those markings. So HS-91, made in Croatia, and serial number 0188, which is repeated on a bunch of the components. These markings are pretty well done. They don't look super hand-stamped crude. This looks to me like something that, you know, the whole gun actually looks like it's reasonably well put together. So it wasn't maybe in someone's garage, but it was a pretty well-fitted garage, if that's how these were built. The rear sight is just a two-position two flip notches, a 100 and a 200 meter. The fire control group is pure PPSh-41, so we have a selector switch for semi and full auto trigger. That's all there is to it. The safety is that switch essentially on the bolt. Push it in, and the bolt can't go forward or back. And you can also engage that safety when the bolt's cocked. So as long as that's in, if I pull the trigger, it tries to drop, but it can't because that is holding it in place. The butt stock is actually M56, although that's very similar to the PPSh. This is a sling plate from an M56. Note that we have a serial number here on the stock, 0188. There is a rubber butt pad that was put on that was glued. It's kind of coming off on the bottom and reinforced with a nail up at the top. Now, where this differs from the PPSh on the top is with the disassembly method. So the PPSh had a separate stamped latch that you pushed forward, and then you could pivot open the receiver. this has a side-to-side latch on it, so I push that over to the left, and there we go. Then I can pivot open the receiver, again, just like a PPSh-41. And the bolt in here is straight up PPSh-41. There's the sear. That is the semi-auto disconnector, which will come up if I put the gun into semi-auto mode. When the bolt travels over that, it resets the sear so that I have to pull the trigger a second time. There's the ejector. The barrel on this one, unfortunately, has been plugged. It's been deactivated. The bolt here is pure PPSh, although it is numbered 0188 to match the rest of the gun, but fixed firing pin, extractor, has a recoil spring and buffer straight out of a PPSh. One interesting difference here is that this selector switch is actually a single milled piece, where on the actual Russian PPShs that is a stamped component. So this may have actually been manufactured new. Well, we know the receiver was manufactured new to have this separate style of disassembly. So someone actually made this copying the PPSh. If you happen to know more about the HS-91, if you're in Croatia or were associated with it in some way, or you know someone who was, I would love to hear from you down in the comments or via email. It'd be really cool to know more about exactly where this came from and more of its backstory. So Headstamp Publishing actually has a book in the works on Croatian small arms, and well, right now we got pretty much nothing on the HS-91, so it'd be cool to fill in that story a bit if possible. Anyway, a big thanks to the Police Museum for giving me access to this, as far as I know, one-of-a-kind piece to film for you guys. If you're ever in Zagreb and have some time to spare, definitely consider checking out the museum. It's on the smaller side, but it's got some really cool stuff on exhibit. At any rate, thanks for watching. See you on the next video.